Very hi to all the viewers. This is a news bulletin from The Hindu dated 5th of August 2022. Kerala stares at report of 2018 floods as rain ferry continues. Toll rises 22, swollen rivers inundate many areas, thousands shifted to camps. Now friends, this article deals with GS paper 3 disaster management. We will read this topic under the heading Urban Flooding. Under this article, we will learn about urban floods in India, the definition of urban flood, and the reasons that triggers urban flooding. What are the impacts of urban flooding? The reason behind the urban flooding, the factors that contribute to urban flooding, and the measures that we should take to prevent urban flooding. So let's get started. Now here we could see a picture of this disaster, and these recent floods have taken by surprise both governments and people. So you could see here in this picture that several waterlogging has brought the city to halt, with hospitals and residence areas filled with waist deep water. Transport services have been disrupted, with many trains cancelled, and sometimes there is no electricity, and there is lack of food and drinking water, and the supply of these materials put on halt. And while there is untimely heavy rains can be attributed to a delays retreated of the monsoon. The massive urban flooding is largely an unplanned urbanization problem. The problem of flooding in urban areas is not only due to overflowing river, but the uninformed way in which our cities are coping with urbanization also play large role. We could see the data that Mumbai flooded 2005, Surat 2006, Kashmir 2010, Chennai 2015, Bhubaneswar 2017, Vadodara 2019, Patna 2019, and recently Kerala. So it has been a trend of almost every year when urban cities gets flooded during the monsoon season. So first of all, we would learn what is urban flooding. This is a definition. I have picked it up for you from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It says the inundation of property in a built environment, particularly in more densely populated areas. This is important. Densely populated area caused by heavy rain falling on increased amount of impervious surface. This is also important. We would see later on that rainfall may not only be the reason of urban flooding and overwhelming the capacity of drainage system. So the important things that we need to learn, that inundation of property, particularly densely populated area, impervious surface, and overwhelming the capacity of drainage system are the main factors that cause flood in urban areas. So the definition further says we can split the definition into three separate components. Urban flooding is caused by rain, fall of impervious surface, overwhelm local stormwater drainage capacity. Each of these components, heavy precipitation, which is expected to become more frequent due to climate change, increased urbanization, and insufficient or outdated stormwater. Infrastructure presents a challenge in and to itself, with urban flooding sitting at the intersection of all three. It's no wonder that this is a complex problem. So as I have said that the intersection of all these three problems is the main cause of urban flooding, which is heavy rain, impervious surface, and increased urbanization. Now next is urban floods are triggered due to following reasons. The first of all, the star point we need to observe, definition has no mention of floodplains, river or coastline. That's because urban flooding has little to do with bodies of water, because you can relate it, these bodies or water were earlier there when the cities have not been built. say dated prior to 50 or 60 or 70 years before. But how come this problem has all of become sudden? So had it been the cause of water bodies present beside the any urban city, it would have been the prolonged years and ages problem of flooding. But this urban flooding has been a recent phenomena. I will let you know that why only presence of water body is not the only cause of flooding in, or may not be the essential cause of urban flooding. Urban floods are triggered due to following reasons: by natural or artificial ground saturation from excess rainfall, overflowing of rivers, extreme coastal activities, and second, catastrophic failure in infrastructure. So now we will learn what are the economic losses because of the urban flood. At the global level, flood causes 104 billion US dollar natural hazards, whereas earthquake cause 113 billion US dollar, which is 36% of the total disaster. Tsunami cause 2% and storm cause 16%. This data is from the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction 2015. Whereas in India, average annual loss by disasters, maximum by floods, followed by tsunami, storms, cyclone, and then earthquake. So this is the fact that we can use in our answer writing. So what are the losses that we incurred from the urban flood? Loss of life and property, disruptions to transport and power, epidemic during monsoon, economic losses of infrastructure, industry and commerce, etc. Next, national supply chains put on halt as hourly wages to the daily wages workers cut off and traffic signals often disrupted. And who is most vulnerable when a city starts flooding after intense rainfall? A breakdown in public services, closing of schools, and difficulty in transportation, waterlogging, shortage of potable water and food, railway lines flooded with water, and the low-lying regions like seepages, roads, highway, or squatter settlement pop up are the areas which are more prone to flooding. Now here we will understand an important phenomena by understanding the characteristic of the developed land. And developed land means the concretization of the land, and the natural land which is covered with the natural green canopy. So first of all we need to understand the characteristic of land under natural surface and developed land. Only then we would be able to understand that why urban floods take place irrespective of the presence of any water bodies nearby. So we could see here that this is a figure of a natural land. Now natural land has a lot of, it is full of canopy of trees. So there is a green canopy. So this canopy has a tendency to soak the rainfall, thereby retard the flow in natural landscape. So when the trees absorb the rainfall, there is not much plenty of water which is available to flow at the surface or at the landscape. Second, the water pool absorb the water. You can see a small stream which we called as depression. So this water pool in depression and soil absorbs the water. Again I am repeating, this water pool, the channel or a depression, and the soil absorbs the water from the rain. The tendency is much more, the absorbing tendency is much more, or we could say that most of the water percolates beneath or underground than what it flows the upper surface. Plus the roots of the trees anchors the soil and minimize the erosion. Erosion means they do not allow the soil to deplete. As we have seen that urban floods are most of the time are muddy, so they take away soil along with it. Next is the soil and natural vegetation. This natural vegetation bring the momentum and rainfall and reduce the surface erosion. This way, runoff means the water at the upper surface. Here we could see this arrow symbolizes runoff. So the runoff is reduced. The water which flows at the surface and which is the cause of the flood gets reduced, because most of the water gets percolated beneath or underground. And later we would see that a model of sponge city has been developed by China. So we would see later this, how to overcome this problem. Now next is, but on the other hand, what happened in the developed land? The pavement, this pavement which we concretized, and rooftop shut the water to go beneath, or it does not allow to percolate underground. So this water is delivered through the storm water through drainage network to the river system. As this impervious land does not allow the water to percolate, so it travels surface and it run away into the rivers nearby, which raise the water level of the river along the river bed. So the street gets flooded, or either it flows towards the stream or towards the streets. So streets get flooded, they act as a stream collecting storm water and channel into the water. So this way, the change in the hydrological process in urban areas, change in runaway pattern and flooding of streets takes place. And a very dangerous thing is that when this water comes away, it carries pollutant which is scattered on the surface from the chimneys, pollutant collected from the upper surface, washed through the stream, river, lakes and other areas. So this in turn is a cause of epidemic or various health hazards. So this is a small comparison of the natural land versus developed land. Now in this diagram we would see how impervious cover affects hydrological characteristic. So we could see that urban flooding and its hydrological effects on urbanization. Here we could see that this is a natural land full of canopies, and slowly urbanization started taking place. Here it is replaced, this house is replaced with one tree, then it is replaced much more, and a whole of the urbanization has taken place. Now we could see that in natural vegetation, the cover is 100% natural. In this case, 40% of evapotranspiration takes place and 10% of the runoff takes place, which is 10% runoff take place. There is large infiltration that means percolates beneath, shallow and deep. But when impervious area increases, here in semi-urbanized, evapotranspiration reduces and runoff increases and infiltration reduces. So here we have seen 10% of runoff, and here we could see just the double of 20% runoff. And the same happens that 30% runoff, more than 30% runoff. So in a nutshell, we could see the effect of urbanization on the hydrological cycle. So what we have learned, that hydrological effect of urbanization is how impervious cover affect hydrological characteristic. With natural ground cover, 25% of rain infiltration into aquifer and only 10% ends up as runoff, as I have already told you. As impervious increases, less water infiltrates and more runoff takes place. But in highly urbanized area, over one half of all rain becomes surface runoff and deep infiltration is only a fraction. Now we could see that as impervious area increases, there is no infiltration, there is no percolation beneath the ground, which in turn led to drought condition or the lower in the water table during the summer season. So on one hand, this less infiltration causes flood during monsoon. On the other hand, it causes drought condition in the summer. while lowering the water table in the urban areas. So, increased surface runoff requires more infrastructure to minimize flooding. So, if on one hand, if we have increased the infrastructure, it will increase the runoff. And in order to channelize this runoff properly so that it will not lead to inundation or a flood situation, we need to develop more of infrastructure to minimize flooding. How? The waterways end up being used as a drainage channels. We need to develop proper drainage system and frequently lined up with rocks or concrete to move water more quickly and prevent erosion. So, in addition, as deep infiltration decreases, the water table also decreases, reducing groundwater for wetland. Then it affects wetlands, then riparian vegetations, wells, lowering in the water line of the wells and other uses. So in this discussion we have learned that not only the precipitation or not only the presence of big hydrological water bodies present beside the urban areas is the cause of flood, but it has a bigger reason, which is the concretization, the way urbanization has taken place, the way concretization of street and beneath the foundation of the buildings have taken place, and that's how cities are more prone to urban floods. So experts are saying that flooding in urban and pre-urban areas are happening due to unplanned waste dumping and continuous disregard of natural recharge structures like pond, wetlands and tanks. So we have learned that floods are result of both meteorological, which is rainfall frequency, intensity, storms, temperature and hydrological factors. What are these? Groundwater level, extent of impervious surface, when combined with anthropogenic factors in urban cities, which are land use change, exploitation of floodplains by construction and similar activities, poor solid waste management. This is important, as we say that the dumping of the plastics near the riverbed beds stop the free flowing channel of the river, and destruction of drainage complicates the system. Next is urban flooding contributing factors. Natural causes, as I have already explained, heavy precipitation, frequently and consequent snow melt, cyclonic storm. And anthropogenic causes are urbanization, encroachment of water bodies, silting and clogging of drains, deforestation, sudden release of water from reservoirs, failure of release water from dams resulting in backwater effects. Hydrological causes, which is soil moisture level, presence of impervious cover, channel cross-sectional shape and roughness, runoff emanating from various parts of watershed. I have earlier said that the presence of the water bodies near the urban cities has least to do with that of the urban flood. We would see that these floods are not natural, but these are man-made disasters. This is an extract I have taken out from the Down to Earth, and it says that overburdened drainage, fringed and unregulated construction, building construction without paying any heed attention to the natural topography and hydrogeomorphology adds to this damage. So this makes urban flood easily more of man-made disasters rather than a natural disaster. With rapid urban expansion, builders have been constructing increasingly on reclaimed wet floodplains and lowlands on the city, as these areas have a cheaper land rate. What is surprising though is that not just private builders, the government too is building on such vulnerable areas. This is a matter of concern for upcoming new development project. How? We have seen that back in 2000s, Delhi Akshardham Temple Complex and Commonwealth Games Village were built right on the Yamuna's floodplain. The secondary runway of Chennai International Airport was also built right over Adyar River. Most of the airport was constructed on the riverine floodplains, leading to massive flooding during 2015 Chennai floods. Also, even recent developments such as Andhra Pradesh Amravati Capital City project had major areas proposed to be built on floodplains of Krishna river. So these are the challenges and these are the forecasting. So what should we do in order to curb such problems? We should plan water sensitive urban design and planning techniques, especially in the context of implementation. These methods take into consideration the topography, the type of surfaces, whether it is pervious or impervious, natural drainage, very important, and leave less impact on the environment, which is sustainable development. And vulnerability analysis and risk assessment should form part and parcel of city master plans. And foremost important, in changing climate, our proposed infrastructure, especially in stormwater drainage, has to be built considering the new normals, which is tools such as predictive precipitation modeling can help to do that. And also with the adaptive capacity of urban land use. And most important is strong land use controls. Environment impact assessment and enforcement will remain vital to ensure that fragile wetlands and floodplains are not concretized. This is very important. The development should be sustainable in terms of environment impact assessments, and the wetlands and the floodplains should not be concretized. This will be a cause of havoc in the cities. Now this is the standard operating procedure developed by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Now this ministry has suggested various measures based on the studies, the causes and the effect of urban flooding, and how based on certain studies the reduction in the urban flooding could take place. So let's see. It says that the specific actions to be undertaken by various departments and agencies, both government and non-government agencies, organization under district administration as well as state government for responding to urban flooding disaster of any magnitude. Model SOP is an indicative SOP document issued for guidance of states and UT administration for preparation of their city specific SOPs. So let's see what the document has to say in detail. So this is urban flooding preparedness and mitigation measures. This says it has 5 components: preparedness phase, early warning phase, response phase, relief phase, and restoration phase. In preparedness phase, the necessary measures of planning, capacity building, and other preparedness so as to be in a state of readiness. This is the first phase. This is a kind of early warning system. It works based on the different data that we get or that we collect from the satellites. The next is early warning phase. Necessary measures to provide timely, qualitative and quantitative warning to urban flooding based on the design, based on the width of the streams or the water channels, so that the runoff water could be easily diverted from the main cities towards the ocean or towards the big water bodies. So based on the datas, pre-datas, the meteorological datas, the datas from the satellites, etc., etc. And response phase, necessary measures to provide immediate relief to the affected people. This is the response. This has to be done by the government agencies like laws and order, policing, National Disaster, NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. Relief phase, necessary measures to provide immediate relief and assistance to the affected people in terms of essential needs, food, drinking water, health and hygiene, shelters. Then comes the restoration phase, which is the rehabilitation, necessary measures to stabilize vulnerable situation and to restore the utilities. Now, the next here, typical urban drainage system. This is the traditional one. For example, we could say that the solid waste dumped in the stormwater drainage besides the river beds or the streams channels. Here we could see that this is the passage of the river. So a huge solid waste has been dumped here, thereby blocking the runoff water. And here we could see that the inlet has been blocked by the waste. So the passage of the water through channel has been blocked. So this will further leads to the flood situation. And here we could see studies through the satellite. We could plan the amount of water that could be taken away from this river streams, so that the relief measures or the immediate response that we could give during the flood situation. Now there is next is urban flooding sustainable urban drainage planning. So this is sustainable urban drainage planning. In this, maps and plans are to be required to build sustainable urban drainage planning or for water master plan, sewer master plan and stormwater master plan. So these plans should be made in advance so that it could mitigate the flood system in urban areas. And next is sustainable drainage system. So this plan is on the basis of this, the sustainable drainage system, which is SUDs, and this is based on the traditional rainwater harvesting philosophy, which says that nearby the drainage there should be some small vegetations to hold the amount of water nearby the streets, so that the all runoff which is carried through the river channels and then finally to the sea, and then which leads to flooding in the urban areas, could be absorbed simultaneously at every important places, so that they could hold water, the water could percolate, or it would act as a sponge to absorb water, which thereby not leading to flood. So mimic natural drainage from a site. Where possible, manage water on surface, manage runoff close to the sources and provide multiple benefit. Now next is cities and climate change. This is very important. There are so many studies has been conducted and the research has been done. On the basis of that, minimum and maximum temperature 2 to 4 degrees centigrade have risen in the past 100 years, 7% to 20% in mean annual precipitation, frequency of rainfall and sea level rise by 0.8 mm by the end of this century. So on the basis of these studies, we can draw conclusion that it has definite impact, the climate change impact on cities, towns and other human settlements. Due to rapid urbanization, cities are more at risk given the existing environmental, economic and social problems. Cities with large concentration of population, property and crucial economic assets and infrastructure are in highly vulnerable state. And next is what cities should do. Climate change already has impact on large cities in coastal and low-lying areas. So the government, the local government, the central government have to take adaptation measures. Urban local bodies should adopt efficient land use planning, waste management and energy consumption and transportation. Through planning and regulation, local government should take proactive role in adaptation to climate change. And there should be climate resilience measures that the government should take. Develop appropriate risk assessment, building, retrofitting and strengthening, lifeline infrastructure development, hazard modification, relocation and rehabilitation. And last but not the least, improve water sanitation, housing deficiencies in the poor neighborhood of urban settlements, which are slums. So this was all about urban flooding and mitigations. I hope you found this video informative. Please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much.